How has the leading man changed over the years in film and television? Has that change been for the better, or has it soiled the image of masculinity? And did television have an instrumental role in changing these archetypes? Let's first start with what the status quo was for the leading man. In the 80s and mid-90s, men were men, strong, resourceful, sexy, smart, and always came out on top. They were the epitome of wish fulfillment, the macho, muscle-bound heroes of the 80s. Women apparently wanted them, and men wanted to be them. But there wasn't that much depth to them. They solved their problems by shooting or punching them. The movies weren't exactly high concept either, and the ones that were only had external conflicts, where characters themselves didn't change much, besides maybe caring a little more for their family members. TV sci-fi shows, such as Doctor Who, The Twilight Zone, and Star Trek, had high concept episodes, but that's all they were, episodes. The nature of episodic shows is that everything is wrapped up in the one episode. Serial-type shows, where plot lines followed from one episode to the next, were reserved for soap operas, but these were mainly seen as women's television, on during the day for shorter periods of time and primarily made to help advertisers sell homewares, such as soap, hence the term. So how did it all change? Cable and satellite channels were emerging, such as Foxtel. We now needed to pay for shows, and so these shows needed to be of higher quality. People now had options. More and more channels were coming up. Audiences didn't just have to take what was given. Producers now needed to make themselves noticeable to get the views. There needed to be something that separated them from normal TV, to be worth their price. So in came HBO. HBO brought in The Sopranos in 1999. The leading man was the head of the mafia, a male lead that ticked all the right boxes for men's atypical wish fulfillment model. He was ruthless, direct, and the boss of the world, apart from the fact that he had a panic attack at the start of the show, within the first episode. He also didn't have control over his own biological family, even if he did over his mobster one, most of the time. This was a first, and it was an interesting first. A faulty male lead, a strong yet weak man. It had the appeal of a soap opera, with the melodramatic home life, interpersonal problems, and individual growth, while still being set in a realistic crime world. Michael Newman said this new quality turn in television tried to masculinize soap operas, whereas Jason Mitchell said it tried to femininize traditionally masculinist genres. So who was correct? Well, to be honest, both of them. The emotion and feeling of the over-exaggerated soap opera was now grounded in the heavier world of crime drama. In saying that, I feel like the term feminize is a bit shallow. Emotions are not only for women, they are for all people. The head of a mafia gang had panic attacks, and yet he was still a strong character. Men could finally see that having emotions and feeling sad, overwhelmed or scared was all perfectly healthy and normal, and now characters could change and evolve over multiple episodes. This frame of thinking grew even further a few years later when The Wire came out in 2002. Where The Sopranos was still slightly episodic, but with an overarching narrative per season, The Wire was a complete serial. It was one of the heaviest crime dramas of the time, and yet it had emotional ups and downs. People got over addictions, people were killed and then mourned over. Characters could be seen to change from multiple episodes, remember what happened to their friends in the past, and then learn from it. It had almost no standalone plot lines. It had the baddest of bad show emotion, loss and fear. Men were now being shown that it was okay to cry, to be depressed, something that had been utterly condemned until then. Television could now focus on internal struggles rather than just high-concept external ones. Brilliant people could now be flawed. The genius of Gregory House is undercut by the physical pain he lives through every day. He is overtly arrogant, but Hugh Laurie's portrayal lets us see the sadness and loneliness within. This turns the character into a relatable human, flaws and all. So first, we were allowed high-concept external narrations. Then, complex TV gave us characters that we could relate to, people who had internal conflicts. They weren't just idyllic images of what we wanted to be anymore. And finally, we were now given characters that made us question our own morals. For example, in 2008, we got Breaking Bad's Walter White, who is just one such character. We have an allegiance with him from the get-go, not just because he looks like a weak character that we want to champion, but because he is played by Bryan Cranston, who is known to most as the lovable man-child of a father, Hal, from Malcolm in the Middle. We stayed aligned with him for most of the series, as we are continuously questioned, what would you do in this situation, until we are genuinely not sure. His acts become so vile, we have to ask ourselves, would we be able to do the same if push came to shove? Walter tries to convince us, himself, and the other characters in the show that he is the lesser evil, that he is doing it for his family, or if that doesn't work, it's because he is the victim of his situation. So not only is he a relatable, flawed character that we align ourselves with over the course of the show, but he also becomes a moral compass for the viewers. In the end, I believe that complex serialized TV shows have made a fantastic impact on not just television, but the medium as a whole. We started with talking about 80s movie heroes. Let's look at the fictional heroes of today. We have a superhero that is in pain and has lost everything and needs to find a way to care again. We have an assassin that is on a revenge mission because he lost a puppy that was his only link to his dead wife. A man who is stealing thoughts in a majestic piece of cinematic art just so he can get back to his children and get over the loss of his wife. And a James Bond who is destroyed because he loved and lost. I think we're doing pretty well.